am Sharmadean Reid and I founded War Nails, and I'm working on a new app called Beauty Stack.
Hi, I'm Christine and I founded Silke London, which is a haircare company with my mum Maria.
I'm Katherine Ireland. I'm a principal with Palamon Capital Partners. We're the main shareholder in Feelunique, and I spend a lot of time looking at different digital and consumer businesses.
My name's Verity, and I co-run and own a company called Tits with Georgia, the ginger one over there. And we're basically a badass baking brand that makes sweet stuff for the Instagram generation.
I had quite a steep change in career, so I was actually in finance, and then I knew I always wanted to do something more, like I just knew it wasn't for me. I was far more creative and I just wanted to do something that I could see grow. And my mum, who is a hairstylist with over 35 years experience, she came up with something that was like transforming her clients' hair, like making them feel so much more confident. And all my friends were saying to me, you know, like, this product's really amazing, like, why aren't you doing something with this? And obviously it was transforming my hair, but it's my mum, so I was like, yeah, she's just doing her thing. But it was incredible, and like watching other women react to it, like that was support in itself, and the feedback we were hearing from them. But then when I eventually went to my mum and I was like, Mum, you know, this is something we could do together and we could make it something incredible. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And that was her supporting me, obviously. And the next day I went in and I quit my job and we started Silke London together.
I'm really lucky in that I've had quite a lot of female bosses, and they've all been amazing in different ways. I remember when I was 16, my first ever boss was a woman who owned the best club night in London. It was like the best rave ever. But I learnt a lot from watching her. She didn't ever she didn't partake in the like raving. She always had eagle eye. She always watched the money. In fact, one of the best lessons that I learned from her, because I actually worked with her when the club owner launched a pub, and I worked in the pub with her. I remember her getting the waste trays at the end of each night and being like pouring them into a pint glass and being like, look, we've lost out on £3.29 because you guys have wasted the thing, and like every penny counts. And I remember her, like, she taught me procurement. She taught me like to research lots of different partners to find the best suppliers, the best deals, everything. So although it was in the entertainment industry, I learnt a lot from her, being very responsible with the business. So I'm really lucky in that all the female bosses I've had have been really inspiring to me.
I never had a female boss, or actually never had a female who was more kind of senior to me. So throughout my career, I've always been the most senior female in almost every organization kind of within the team I worked in, which is certainly an interesting kind of glass ceiling to be breaking. But I'm very lucky in that my mother has been a really strong role model. And she always kind of brought me up, not to think about gender, but just to think about achievement and just do the best I could and not even consider whether kind of I was a girl or a boy. And I think that has certainly set kind of a very strong precedent. And so yes, obviously every day you realize there are differences, but ultimately we're all kind of professionals, we're all entrepreneurs, we're all just kind of people trying to kind of do the best we can. And I think that lesson has always stuck with me.
My granny gave us the first amount of money to set up the business, so I guess that means she believed in us. And to be honest, it was a bit of a ropey idea at first, so I'm surprised she gave away the money to set it up, because I think everybody else in my family was a bit suspicious, because Georgia and I trained as actresses first. They were like, here we go, it's another change of career, but she believed in us, and now we have a real business. So I'm, you know, really happy that she had faith.
If someone looked at my CV, they wouldn't think I could do what I do. Like, my CV quite clearly shows a clear line in finance, that's it. But I knew I could do it. And I think what most people don't realize, like, obviously, you know, there's higher education for certain jobs that you have to do. Like, I don't advise that any budding doctors go out there and just try and get experience. But, you know, there's a lot of jobs, like, you don't necessarily need the higher education, and it's about the work ethic. And for me, like, when I'm looking for people to work with me, I want you to tell me you can do it. Like, people miss that trick. Like, in the covering letter, in the email, just say to me, I know like my CV, I might not have the technical skills, but I can do this, because that's what I would say. And I can teach someone technical skills. I can't teach someone work ethic. And when that comes across, that to me is the most important thing, because I know they've got drive.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that work ethic thing, which I thought that everyone kind of had automatically, but they don't, as I'm learning. I would say, coupled with the work ethic, is showing that you are obsessively passionate about the field that you're going into, that you are prepared to go above and beyond. I think we're so like spoiled in London that everyone wants to live here, everyone wants to work here, therefore the talent pool is extremely large. So if you're like swimming in a pool of like talent, how can you actually rise above it and be like, no, pick me, pick me? When I was 17 and I wanted to intern, so just before I moved to London, I wanted to intern with one particular stylist. I didn't want to like intern at the magazine or just do generic internships. I only wanted to work for this guy. So what I did was I took all of his shoots from the magazine, I photocopied them, and I cut them out into pop-up books, very extra. But obviously, I posted him these books where his shoots popped open, and he called me immediately and said, when are you moving to London? You can come and work for me as soon as you're here. And I know that if I just sent a random email, it wouldn't have even gotten to him. So I think when people come to me now, and it does often happen, but like not often, it does happen, but not very often. If someone is so extra, that I'm just literally looking at them being like, wow, you are extra. They think I'm saying it in a negative way, but I'm actually like full of admiration and positivity, because how extra can you be to show someone that you really want it?
I think for me, persistence and just sheer kind of determination. I'll never forget the first day of my first job. I was a little analyst at Goldman Sachs, and my boss called me in and said, why did we hire you? I don't understand. You studied history. What are you going to do in finance? And I sat there, kind of shook for a minute, and said, well, I'm going to run faster than they can. And within 6 months, I proved myself. And I think just applying kind of sheer determination and just working really hard, kind of there's nothing that replaces it.
I think you just have to be brave enough to not think that you have to go down the prescribed route. Like, I went to like a private boarding school. I then went to university. I then dropped out because I just wasn't into it. I was doing a history degree. My mum had said she wanted me to go there first before I then went to drama school. I then went to drama school. I'm obviously not an actress now. And it's like, you know, I had lots of goes at things, and it just wasn't for me. And eventually, it took me till I was about like 26 or something for me and Georgia to actually get this thing going. And that is a long time, and sometimes I feel quite far behind my contemporaries who are doing really well and sort of in their business roles, and they've got all this experience. But also, they're all so jealous of what me and Georgia do as well. They look at our sort of all the events we get to do and the people we get to meet, and they're like, I so wish I'd had the confidence to do something like that, because I guess they feel it's too late. But it's never too late. But definitely just don't always listen to what your careers teacher tells you at school.
I think there's first one thing that we can do as women, and that's actually support other women. I think the women that you sit with kind of in your day jobs, but also your friends, are one of the most important support networks, and kind of always making sure that women are friends to women, which sometimes we're kind of known not to be, is one of the most important things. I mean, I think about the people who have been most valuable in keeping me kind of where I am. It's absolutely them. I think men have a huge role to play as well in terms of empowering and supporting women, but I think the thing to remember is to be brave. I can't tell you how many times, if you're brave and consistent with that message of kind of what you believe in, people will eventually listen. It just might take a couple of years. But I think it's definitely a problem that exists.
In the creative industries, I mean, I've never worked in a different one, but I think you might get less of a knock because people expect women to excel in that kind of area. But I imagine if you're in a very sort of business-driven industry, it is a lot harder. So personally, I don't know. And actually, you know, our business partner is a guy. He's also got a wife who's involved in the business as well. But, he came to us because he saw what we did and he loved it. And, he actually thought we should call it Sugar Tits, but he didn't want to say anything because he thought we'd think it was creepy. And then Georgia came up with the idea anyway. And when we saw him, he was like, yes, I really wanted you to call it this. And he's amazing. So I think, we can't badmouth all the men out there because there are some ones who've really got our backs.
I think that something more women need to realise, or like we just need to really get into our heads, is that being like this archaic idea that there should be a pay gap and that there is more senior men in the workplace, like the people who think that's okay or enact it, they are ridiculous. And it doesn't even make business sense. Like, you don't hire someone because they're a man, and you don't give them more money because they're a man. You hire on merit. If I want my business to do well, I hire the best person for the job, and I pay them what they're worth. And I think once we start realizing how silly it really is when we become more confident to go in and be like, you know what, why is that person being paid more than me? And why didn't you hire me? Why are all my managers men? This doesn't make any sense, because we shouldn't be embarrassed to ask those questions. They should be embarrassed to answer them. And I think that's something we really need to take heed of and go out there and ask the questions.
I think that because if you're a confident woman, as clearly we all are, it's really easy to think that you have some sort of power. But in reality, we don't actually have the levels of power that we ought to have. So I think it's not an argument you can ignore. And I think I used to think that it was, like you said, in the creative industries, that when I worked in fashion, I always used to say this is the most democratic industry you could work in. I never really felt that I was oppressed as a female or even oppressed as a black female, because in fashion, as long as you're talented, you work hard, you can rise to the top. But then I started to look around me and I was like, who on this set is getting paid the most amount of money? And it would always be the art director, and that art director would always be a guy. I'd be like, who's getting paid the second most amount of money? It'd be the photographer. My photographer friends, when I was 25 years old, could charge up to 30 grand a day, and I'd be charging 3 grand a day. Do you know what I mean? So although you think, yeah, I'm empowered, I'm earning 3 grand a day, that's loads of money, but 30 grand a day is a lot more. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I feel grateful for the position that I've carved out with myself, because I've always been fortunate enough to choose the path for me. And by choosing that path, obviously, I have ownership over that. And I'm the only person who can limit me to some degree. But you should never forget that the layers of oppression are so deep and complex that it's not just as simple as, yeah, I'm, asking, like, why are all these managers around me men? You should definitely ask those questions, but you should ask them 5 times, because the layers will be 5 times as deep. Obviously, because we're young, like, it's hard for people to take a young person seriously, but I feel like I've had the same constructive thinking in my strategies and ideas when I was 19 to now. Like, there's nothing, the way my brain processes information hasn't changed. It's just that it's gotten a bit bigger in the information I'm processing. But yeah, when you were younger, people would be like, well, why should we listen to you? So there's definitely a bit of biding your time and proving your worth. As a woman, proving it takes a lot longer to prove. Like you said, it might take 2 years. Whereas if a guy just walked in confidently, he could turn everyone around by the end of the afternoon. Do you know what I mean? But actually, I've had it in reverse. So I'm 33 years old, and I actually applied recently to a camp of tech nerds that all talk about artificial intelligence in Lake Tahoe once a year. And they emailed me saying they've declined my application because I'm too old. I was like, what? So it works both ways.
Yeah, I've often felt like, as a young woman in meetings, that I'm being underestimated. You can feel it, that someone's looking at you and not taking you very seriously. And I always just think, you don't seem to realize this is fueling me a lot more. I want to do better because you're underestimating me. And like what you're saying, if they're underestimating me, they must be underestimating so many people. Like, what are you missing when you're doing your business? Like, what are you missing out on because you're not listening to people who are younger and people who are older? Because it's true, like, it works both ways, especially with tech. I can imagine that, and that's so ridiculous.
It's an interesting issue. I always think of a story my mother told me when I was a kid, where she went into a business meeting with her business partner, who was male, and someone in the business meeting says, "Oh, I popped a button off my sleeve. Do you mind helping?" And her business partner goes, "Well, I'm the team seamstress." And so I think it's a really important kind of moment where men can help and can kind of counteract both the female but also the age issue, because one of the issues with kind of being young and female is it's sort of a double whammy. I think kind of in my day-to-day life, one thing that I always try to focus on is doing my homework, because facts and numbers don't lie. And if you walk into a room and make an assertion, if you're able to back it up and show proof, it's very hard for someone to say you're wrong. And that's the kind of biggest antidote to being young and maybe a bit kind of different from anyone else in the room.
Sometimes it works both ways. Like, I'm 30, and like often I think just like when me and Georgia meet people or something, they sometimes maybe assume we're younger, because Georgia actually is younger. But they're like, but then at other times I think it works in our favor as well, because it is a young brand and people are talking to us and they want to use us because they think we're young and we've got our finger on the pulse and we know what's cool and stuff like that. And sometimes I actually worry that in reverse, the older I get, they might not want to work with me anymore, because they might be like, what do you know? But, you know, that's ridiculous. Like, you're good at what you do, you know what you know, and it's really got nothing to do with age, because like sometimes you meet people, like I think you meet people who are like much younger, and I've just assumed they're older than me because of what they've achieved or like how they handle themselves, and they're just like everything like that. And I'm like, okay, whoa, I'm 30, you're 19, you are killing this, you're putting me to shame. So I just think age doesn't matter.
I have like a quadrant. I have like work, family, social, and self. And I can only ever do 2.5 of those like really well. So something has to give. And once you accept that, it's like a calmness washes over you. There's for me, I don't hardly ever go out, and I don't see friends apart from 1 day a week. And I make a Calendly link. So if they want to see me, they have to book in with me. And I just don't, I live my life by my calendar so strictly that nobody, like if people throw me off, it really stresses me out. And I just think time is the one thing that is the most valuable thing. Like when you think about what wealth brings you, it's basically time and freedom. That's all it is. Like time is so valuable. So you just have to decide, you're the king or queen of your time. If you're like stressed or rushing around, it's only your fault, because you've put those things in your calendar that stress you out. So now, when my son was younger, I've got a 7-year-old child. So for the first 5 years of my life, I would constantly double book myself, and then I'd constantly be rushing around, stressing, dropping off with babysitters, going to do this, going to have meetings. And then I was like, why am I running around like a crazy person for? I could just say no. And it's quite simple and easy to say no. And I have like drafted responses for that. So if any of you have emailed me recently, I basically say, at this time, I'm choosing to focus on my new company, Beauty Stack. I'm not really working on XYZ at the moment, but good luck with your project. I hope it all goes well. Because if it's not to do with my business, my family, like my own self-worth, even taking time out of myself, I never used to do. But now, every other Saturday, I have me time. Like, I go for a facial, I go to an art gallery, and I watch a movie all alone. So it's just like, you're the master of your own time. There's none of this rushing around. And I also think it's a very media-driven myth that we've forced on women. Like, we've forced this, like, archetype of a woman who can't do everything all the time. So it's like, you see these scenes of women rushing around, and it's something that, even if you think of all our favourite TV shows like Sex and the City, they're all about rushing around, being busy. It doesn't have to be like that. It's not cool to be stressed.
I have a terrible work-life balance, but there is I I just, because it's, our company's new and like I'm always working on it, like Monday to Friday is like a no-go zone for me, but there is like a rule, like Sunday is just, no, it's family, that is it. Like we always are at home, like me, my brother and sister, our mum cooks for us, like my boyfriend will come around, like that's just what we do, because you have to, like it doesn't matter, you know, I can work till like 2 a.m. on a Monday, it doesn't bother me, but there is like a limit, and that you have to have a limit, because otherwise like you're never going to succeed, you're just going to burn out. And people always used to say to me, oh, you're going to burn out, and I'm like, what is this mythical burnout you're talking about? I can keep going, but I can feel it. Like there's some times where I'm just like, I'm going to crash and I need to stop, and you need to send me these drafted emails.
I completely agree. I think you have to define the line, and I think you're the only person who can define that line kind of when it comes to work-life balance, and it's not easy to do. One kind of antidote that I've increasingly been working on is multitasking and figuring out how I can go for a run with a friend, or how I can read a book on the elliptical, and figuring out how to have structured time where you can get kind of 2 of those 4 quadrants in at the same time actually kind of does enable you to live a little bit more balanced of a life.
Yeah, I think also you have to learn to start like saying no to stuff. And when you first start up your business, you try and say yes to everything, because it's money, it's networking, it's meeting new people who might be able to help you, and it's so difficult to just say no. So in the end, you just take on way too much, and you have to work on your weekends, and you have to work late at night. And I think that's something we're like in our business, we're still struggling to say no to stuff, because every no feels like a missed opportunity. But I think in the end, you just got to take it like you are going to miss some opportunities, because you're going to miss them all if you burn out, the mythical burnout.
When I had WA, I was 24 years old, and I know exactly how you guys feel about like, you never know what might happen if you go to that party. That's how I used to always feel. I'd be like, okay. And I was talking to someone about it the other day, like work FOMO. You can have like, yeah, but what if like I go to that dinner and I happen to be sat next to that buyer who's going to suddenly take all my products? Let me tell you, it never happens, okay? So what I did with WA was the same. I did everything. We never said no to anyone or anything. But what I wish I'd done in hindsight with my company is had a very specific, clear strategy of exactly the distribution channels we were going into, and focused on one-to-one meetings with that. Because business doesn't get done at a party. Like things, you might make connections at a party, but if you're smart, you'll make those connections anyway. And I just found that social time just ate into my whole 20s. My whole 20s were given to my business, and I can't get them back. I'm obsessed with all new technologies, so I've naturally been an early adopter of everything that happened, and was a really early adopter of Instagram. Actually, before Instagram, we would post our nails on Tumblr, and I genuinely think that Tumblr is the reason that we got famous and we kind of changed the culture of nails, is because WA's been around for 9 years now, which is crazy. It's almost like 10 years old. But 9 years ago, we were posting nails on Tumblr, which, because it's networked, meant that we were seen in Singapore or seen in Hawaii or Berlin. Whereas imagine if I just built a website on like GoDaddy.com, no one would have discovered us. So social media has completely built my business. First Tumblr, we also did, before Tumblr, we did Facebook, like mobile uploads. Does anyone remember that on BlackBerry? So we had groups of Facebook mobile upload of nail pictures. Then I had a Tumblr account, and we like had 50,000 pictures, like people sharing our pictures on Tumblr like in a few months. Then Instagram came, and I was pregnant, so I was looking for something to document my bump, and I just searched photo app in the App Store, and it came up. No one was on Instagram. I think only the staff were liking my pictures at the time. And then we were going on a trip to New York with the WA team, and we were in the airport. We were doing a job for British Airways, and I was like, oh my God, the team looks so cute. I'm going to photograph them. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll make an Instagram account for them. And by the time we'd gone to America, New York, where Instagram was popping, by the time we came back, we had 5,000 followers in 3 days. So like, then it completely skyrocketed when they had this different popular page algorithm where every day we gain 1,000 followers, and it's because we would travel globally to do these pop-up nail bars. Every time we went to a new place, we'd get new followers. But yeah, I don't think I'd have a business without social media, and I think that is common of most businesses these days, to be honest.
I think for us, with social media, it's like the real voice of our product. So that's where people say their real reviews, their real comments about what our product's doing and whether it's really benefiting them. Because at the end of the day, like I can...
What's your product?
Oh, I'll tell everyone. So our hero product is the silk hair wrap. So it actually all started with my mum. She's mixed descent, so she's Cypriot and Jamaican, so she always had really difficult to manage hair, and she was a hairstylist she's been a hairstylist for over 35 years, she's there. And she always had difficult to manage hair. It would always snap, it would always break, and one night she just realised, like, this is definitely happening in my sleep, and a traditional Afro-Caribbean hair method is to wrap your hair at night. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Thank you. But what's out there is basically satin bonnets, and they're not very fashionable, and satin is terrible for your hair. It absorbs all the moisture, it absorbs all the oils, and people don't actually seem to realize that. And what she realized was, well, if silk is doing all this amazing stuff for your skin, then obviously it should do it for your hair. So she created a hair wrap out of silk, and the first one didn't look very fashionable, but then that's when we teamed up and we made it look super cool, because women want to look good at night, and they want it to work. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to not only give something better to the women who already knew about it, but also opening it up to women who don't have a clue. Like, you know, but loads of my friends didn't know they need to wrap their hair at night. So that's our product. But what I'm trying to say is that social media tells people the truth. They're not going to believe me. I can tell you all you want. It's going to help your hair grow. It's going to make it shiny. You're going to wake up without frizz. But when someone on social media with their picture and their writing says, oh my God, I woke up and my hair is unbelievable, then you're going to listen, aren't you?
We built our whole business off of Instagram, and I'm so thankful that did exist as an outlet, obviously, for what we did, because I'm just not sure we would have a business without it. And we basically didn't have a website for about 2 years. So we just posted everything on there, and then we're really lucky that Instagram is really integral for us, because companies come to us because they want us to make something Instagrammable. So then if they repost that because they're trying to attract attention, and then by association we get that reflected back at us. So we are very lucky. But also, it's basically the best networking tool. It's such a good way of finding people who are either in a similar field, or people have the same kind of ethos as your brand, or just the same kind of vibe. Like, Wah Nails was one of the first ones that we ever followed. We absolutely loved you guys. We're obsessed with it. And from then onwards, I'm sure we've probably found loads of other brands we've loved via that. And we've met loads of great people. And yeah, basically, I think it's so important. You shouldn't let anyone, especially people from the older generation, because we have found this, tell you that it's not, because I think sometimes they like to behave like, oh, you young'uns with your Instagram, you're obsessed, like you're not actually doing any work when you're flicking through. And it's like, I am. I'm seriously working as I'm scrolling.
What's interesting is that with social media, the lines between kind of professional and personal really fall down. And I think back to my first job when Facebook was banned in the office. And I think to today, where I'm actually doing work on Instagram and doing work on Facebook. And so it's interesting how social media has kind of permeated so many parts of our lives. And I think your point on Instagram is completely true. If you look at how kind of maybe the older generation looks at advertising, it's just completely different for consumer brands these days. And it's really exciting.
Stop assuming that everyone else has the answers. So, like, you know, Sheryl Sandberg didn't wake up COO of Facebook, and, you know, Sarah Blakely didn't wake up the founder of the empire that is Spanx. That just doesn't happen. And, like, there is no doubt in their career, they had times where they were really low and they were like, what am I doing? And they didn't know what they were doing, and they didn't have the answers, but they worked it out. And that is the biggest difference between people who are successful and not. It's that in the times when they are finding it most difficult, like, other people would give up, but these people continue to try and find the answer to the difficult situation they were in. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice, that don't just assume everyone knows everything and you don't, because you can work it out if you want to.
There's never like a good time or a perfect time to start. So don't delay stuff or stall on things because you think, no, the website isn't perfect or the packaging isn't perfect, because we did that. That's why we didn't have a website for ages. I also literally cried for like 6 months because I thought we couldn't find the right packaging. And it's like eventually you realize that like if you don't just get it out there and you don't start, nobody's gonna buy it. Nobody's gonna even know you exist, and you cannot just keep putting things off because you think that like there's gonna come a time where it all comes together, it will be perfect, and you're gonna hit the public like bam, here it is, because it just won't happen like that. You just have to do it incrementally, and one day it will just come together and you're like, whoa, look what I made.
Yeah, I think be brave and talk to lots of people, because someone else has probably encountered the same problem. And I think your friends are an important kind of support group, as are kind of people that you meet, whether it's kind of through your job or through kind of conferences. I think they're helpful.
I think that we're in this age where never before has everything we have done, said, thought been so public that it's easy to be terrified of the shame of failing. And I think that what stops so many people doing things is not having the freedom to experiment. So I was telling my son today, actually, because he's quite obsessed with the concept of university. He's 7 years old. And I was saying, you know, you could start a business if you wanted. And he was like, I'd like to build something like Minecraft, which is like a massive game. But he's like, but it's so big. And I was like, yeah, but, and to echo your point, I was like, but at one point it was just really small. So I think that right now, and I'm finding this personally, because your peer group or there are brands around you that are so well formed, so perfectly finished, they're so like amazing. You're like, I can't possibly do that because I can't start from zero. Like I can't just make a small, for example, like you might see a brand, like let's say a cool makeup brand that has like 27 products and they've got like, you know, 500,000 followers on Instagram and they're popping, and you're like, but I want to make a makeup line, but I can't start with 3 products because that's weird. Well, it's not weird. You just start with 3 products. It's fine. Because if you look at, you know, the brands that are around us now, doing things incrementally, and in tech, we call it like lean startup style or agile development. Like you do a little bit, then test it. Then if it gets better, you add a little bit more, you add a little bit more. When right now people just want to rush, and just echoing points that have already been made, but it's actually crippling. But the reason it's crippling is because you're terrified that people are going to say, oh, she's doing some little side crappy hustle. When you just got to do it, because, you know, I mean, look at Glossier, how fast. That's 3 years and 52 million investment later. Like, it can be that quick. If something is really good, it will catch a fire under its bum and it will rocket ship you. But unless you've like, you know, started building the rocket, where are you going to go? What motivates me is, firstly, to empower globally a bunch of young men and women in the beauty industry that are right now at the bottom of the pile of the beauty industry. So definitely empowering service like treatment people. And secondly, making money, because that does motivate me. I'm just going to be shameless about it, mainly because of the things it will allow me to do, like all my personal projects and more. You know, I'd love to open a school and have a library and do all of these things. And who inspires me? Too many people. I can't answer that one.
What motivates me? That's really hard because there's a lot, but I'd say for me it's never fulfilling what I want to achieve, like never getting there sort of thing. That's what drives me every day. And I'm going to say the one that motivates my mum, because it's the reason we founded our business, and hers is just, so when she does hair, there's this feeling she gets when she makes women feel beautiful, and like if she could encapsulate that, that's what our business would be. That's why it exists. So that's the 2 things that motivate our business. And then who inspires me is obviously my mum, and I'm not going to cry tonight, but it's without a doubt her.
So I'll start with the second one, obviously my mom as well. But on the first, I think it's the fact that I'm an intensely curious person, and I love learning about everything, and every day, that's kind of what keeps me going.
I guess just motivated to kind of be successful and make sure that, you know, the kind of support that like we've had from like our family, and also the fact that, yeah, it did take a while for us both to kind of find our feet in what we wanted to do, and there was some false starts. And just to prove that like it was worthwhile, we can make a success of this. We aren't two just frivolous young girls, despite the fact our company, it's a very frivolous sort of a company and stuff. And just, yeah, and also just to show other people that you don't have to go down that prescribed route. Like, just because you went to a certain type of school or you went to university or all your friends are doing other stuff, you can be just as successful doing something completely different. And the person who inspires us most, we always say this, is Dolly Parton, because like, she is a badass. She is so great. You read any Dolly quotes and you'll know why.